the centuries, delve into some intriguing stories, and find out how the Trust is commemorating Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee this summer. Now, remembering also that this is an old magazine from summer 2022. Okay. Right. I'm going to just fold the magazine up like this. It's a little bit easier to read. So, shall we have a look at the photographs first? Now, the previous page, this one, was a photograph print of Her Majesty the Queen, taken in about 1953, the year of her coronation, by the renowned portrait photographer known as Baron, and is in the collection of Cork Abbey in Derbyshire. And then we've got above left, that is the Oak Gallery at the Fine, Hampshire, where pomegranates, the symbol of Catherine of Aragon, were carved into the panelling to impress King Henry VIII. And inset here, so Her Majesty the Queen and the former Duke of Edinburgh visiting Giant's Causeway in County Antrim in 2016. And here, a Diamond Jubilee party at Basildon Park in Berkshire in 2012. Now, I remember the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977, I think it was. Okay, let's read. The National Trust is thrilled to be joining in the Jubilee celebrations this year, 2022, to congratulate Her Majesty the Queen on her 70-year reign. In recent years, the Trust has had the honour of welcoming the Queen to some of the places in our care, such as a tour of the Giant's Causeway in County Antrim, which she took with the Duke of Edinburgh in 2016. The Trust has also hosted our President, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, of course now the King, who visited Chartwell in Kent in 2017 to thank those who had helped secure Sir Winston Churchill's personal items for the nation. And in 2018, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, overnighted at Clevedon in Buckinghamshire before her late spring wedding. Throughout history, places in Trust care have provided the backdrop to many intriguing royal visits. In this year of Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, we're taking a look back through the archives at some of the Trust's rich heritage of royal connections. When it pleaseth her in the summer season to recreate herself abroad and view the estate of the country, every nobleman's house is her palace. So said clergyman William Harrison, who wrote about Queen Elizabeth I in 1577. Elizabeth enjoyed visiting grand country estates, travelling with a great entourage of courtiers, servants and carts, and stopping in at places such as Mottsfont in Hampshire, or is that Mottisfont? To visit her nobles. It was her way subjects and displaying her power. So here on the right is Penryn Castle, Gwynedd, where Queen Victoria stayed in 1859. And this place here is the Vine in Hampshire. It was built in the 16th century by William Sands, Henry VIII's Lord Chamberlain, and in the inset, the bed that Charles II slept in when he was hiding from Cromwell's army, at Moseley Old Hall, Staffordshire, or is it Mosley? I'm going to say Moseley. Elizabeth was following in her Tudor father's footsteps. Henry VIII visited the Vine in Hampshire on his royal progresses with both Catherine of Aragon in 1510 and Anne Boleyn in 1535, would have taken over the house for the duration of his stay. The house would have become, in essence, a palace for the visit, says National Curator James Rothwell. Henry's court was so grand, he was even known to bring his own musicians to play in the chapel. The Vine's owner, William Lord Sands, was made Lord Chamberlain under Henry VIII, thanks in no small part to his efforts to curry favour with the king. Sands had pomegranates, the emblem of Henry's first wife, Catherine of Aragon, carved into the walls of the oak gallery, and created stained glass portraits of the couple in the chapel. He would have wanted to make sure that everywhere the king looked, Sands' admiration for him was clear. In Kent, meanwhile, Henry took such a shine to Knoll, after hunting there, that in 1538 he compelled its owner, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, to hand it over to him, declaring that Knoll standeth on a sound, perfect, wholesome ground. Welcoming a member of the royal family was considered to be a way of securing favour, but it was hugely expensive for the owner of the house, explains James. Subjects would often want to avoid it because of the sheer expense. Many of the trust's houses are filled with furnishings fit for royalty. When designing their homes, most noble families would have created a suite of staterooms with no expense spared to make sure they were equipped to host important visitors at short notice, says James. The jewel in the crown would have been the state bed. The majestic state bed at Clarendon Park, constructed in around 1710, would have had pride of place in the original Tudor house, with its highly worked silk embroidery. It was the most expensive object in the house. It was one of thousands of priceless artifacts damaged by the 2015 fire. Fortunately, thanks in large part to the quality of its construction, it was able to be dismantled and taken for conservation. There's a magnificent state bed Duke and Duchess of York on honeymoon in 1923 at Poleston Lacey in Surrey. And here, visitors to Poleston Lacey today, following in the footsteps of royalty. And in the inset there is the drawing room at Crackside, Northumberland, where the Prince and Princess of Wales stayed in 1884. And this picture here at the top is Her Majesty the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh with Prince Charles and Princess Anne in 1957. Right. Though Penryn's curators have no documentary evidence for this. Oh, okay. So what did we just say? Oh, right, okay. So Queen Victoria said she wouldn't sleep in the bed because it resembled a tombstone. Maybe not true. More custom furniture was made for Victoria at Hughenden in Buckinghamshire. Her friend and Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli shortened the legs of a dining chair so that the Queen, who stood just 5 foot, could reach the floor while she ate. Victoria enthusiasts can enjoy visiting these furniture curiosities, which are still on display at Penryn and Hughenden today. While many royal visits were regal affairs, some were less formal, even raucous events. At Upark in West Sussex in 1785, the future George IV, then Prince of Wales, stayed with Sir Harry Featherstone Hugh. I'm not quite sure how you say that. Featherstone or Hugh. Okay, we'll say that. They enjoyed 3 days of entertainment, so riotous that Sir Harry's mother, aunt and cousin had to flee. Gosh. There were boisterous horse, pony and sack races for men and women, to which the Prince declared the Newmarket races dull in comparison. The party continued inside the house, where the Prince is even believed to have tethered his dog to the leg of a priceless Chinese-style pagoda cabinet. Well, I suppose if you're brought up in such grand circumstances, something like that is a bit meaningless to you. In 1884, future monarchs, the Prince and Princess of Wales, soon to be King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra, chose the magical modern home of Cragside in Northumberland to stay during their tour of the North. Lured by inventor Lord Armstrong's pioneering hydroelectricity, they favoured it over the region's castles and royal houses. Well, they probably had stayed in so many of them and lived in them. It's not a novelty, is it? Armstrong decorated the estate with glass and paper lanterns, while London caterers were brought in so the Prince could enjoy his favourite champagne poured by his regular waiters. Gosh. The Newcastle Daily Journal reported the chateau itself was ablaze. Of light from every window, the bright rays of the electric lamps shone with purest radiance, and the main front was made brilliant by a general illumination. After their festivities, guests often needed recuperation, which was exactly what George III and Queen Charlotte had in was fleeing Cromwell's parliamentarian army after the Battle of Worcester, the most recent defeat for Royalist forces. For 6 weeks, the desperate Charles relied on Royalist and Roman Catholic families to help him hide, and he was taken into Moseley Old Hall for 2 days. He slept fully clothed to aid a swift escape in the very bed which still stands there today. When soldiers stormed the property, Charles hid under a trapdoor in the bedroom cupboard. Charles declared the dark, cramped hiding place the best place he was ever in. Moseley's owner, Thomas Whitgreave, saw Charles II safely on his way, disguised as a servant, to escape to France. More recently, a long-standing friendship was forged at Poleston Lacey in Surrey, when owner Mrs. Greville hosted the Duke and Duchess of York, the future King George VI, and Queen Elizabeth for their honeymoon in 1923. The newlyweds spent a week playing golf, wandering around the gardens and relaxing on the South Terrace. The couple clearly left a lasting impression, since Mrs. Greville bequeathed the Queen Mother her entire jewellery collection. It included the Greville tiara, which Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, has been seen wearing in recent years. Well, you know now, Camilla, Queen. The Queen Mother returned to Poleston Lacey in 1977 after Mrs. Greville had left it to the Trust to plant a tree in commemoration of the Silver Jubilee of her daughter, Queen Elizabeth II. Yeah, so that's the one I remember, 1977. 20 years later, the Trust welcomed Her Majesty the Queen herself to plant a tree, this time at Hardwick in Derbyshire, to commemorate its 400th anniversary. This year the country joins to celebrate the 70th year of Her Majesty the Queen's reign in 2022. As well as holding parties and picnics, the Trust was marking the event with 70 tree planting projects across the country. So it looks like that tree planting that happened in 2022 is listed here. So it's just a few of the 70 projects. So Anglesey Abbey in Cambridgeshire, Box Hill in Surrey, Cork Abbey in Derbyshire, Mussenden Temple and Downhill, Dements in County Londonderry, and Tredegar House in Newport. Okay, so we have read this article already, so we'll carry on. the scenes they've witnessed, he suggests we admire woodlands in much the same way as we would an exhibition hall in a great museum, and encourages us to pore over each tree as if it were a fine oil painting displayed in the hall. At dinner in Carmarthenshire stands an ancient oak that has stood witness to 800 years of history and remains a living link to medieval Wales. Its life story is written into its marked and scarred trunk and limbs. Across the British Isles you'll find rhododendron, black walnut, magnolia and handkerchief trees demonstrating the historic demand for ever more exotic tree species, a fashion made popular by Victorian plant collectors searching out specimens in distant lands while their garden-loving patrons waited in anticipation back home. The arrival of each new curiosity brought with it an ever more fascinating story of its origin. You can find one of England's first cork oak trees at Osley Park in London. When it was planted in the 18th century, it would have been a real novelty thanks to its impressive appearance. Cork, taken from the thick outer layer of this species, has many practical uses, most notably as a plug for wine bottles. Cork bark has remarkable qualities of flexibility, insulation and impermeability to water and gases, attributes which evolved to help it survive life in the hot, dry woodlands of its native home in southern Europe and North Africa. For me, Simon's book sheds an illuminating new light upon familiar places and trees, shows me so much more than I ever knew of how trees have shaped and moulded the UK's historic landscape. It's a celebration of the time-travelling, storytelling, life-affirming nature of trees. I've chosen 4 of its stories which I hope will pique your curiosity. The next time you pass an old gnarled tree, maybe you'll be encouraged to take a moment, to pause a moment, and ponder the heritage lying hidden in the boughs overhead. Okay, let's have a look. So we start with a symbol of courage, the martyr's sycamore at Tolpuddle in Dorset. Some famous trees are not so extraordinary in their own right, but were in the right place when something remarkable happened. That's the case with the old sycamore that stands on the village green at Tolpuddle in Dorset. Here in 1833, 6 farm workers regularly met beneath it to form the Friendly Society of Agricultural Labourers and protest against the meagre farm wages of the time. The 6 were tried and sentenced in 1834 to transportation to Australia under the Unlawful Oaths Act, designed to prevent workers forming trade unions. Following huge demonstrations, they were pardoned and returned to England. The Tolpuddle Martyrs Act of Bravery was an important moment in the formation of the trade union movement and the establishment of workers' rights. The martyrs' sycamore has come to symbolise their courage in the face of injustice. The tree is estimated to be about 300 years old, so would have already been quite mature even in 1834. The diameter of its trunk seems out of proportion to its small branches and modest height because the tree has been regularly pollarded. Pollarding is a type of pruning which prevents a tree from getting top-heavy and collapsing and will have helped prolong its life. Sycamore, often considered native to the UK, is is thought to have been introduced here from Europe in the 15th century and is now fully naturalised. Distinguished scholar Isaac Newton's apple tree at Woolsthorpe Manor in Lincolnshire. You can just imagine the young physicist Isaac Newton, 1643 to 1727, sitting under the apple tree at his childhood home, contemplating the forces of the universe. Woolsthorpe Manor was Newton's birthplace and family home, and he sought refuge here to work on his scientific theories after plague hit his university town of Cambridge in 1665. Legend has it that Newton formulated his theory of gravity after an apple from the tree in this garden fell on his head. The apple tree's experiences with gravity continued in 2015 when its seeds were sent to the International Space Station. After the seeds returned to Earth, they were propagated and grown at various locations, including one at Woolsthorpe, planted by astronaut Tim Peake. 6 months on, zero gravity didn't seem to have affected their growth, and there is no doubt that once ripe, the apples will fall to Earth as usual. Newton's tree is a flower of Kent, one of thousands of traditional apple varieties, many of which have fallen out of fashion. This variety has an unpleasant, mealy texture and poor flavour, so the tree might well have disappeared if it weren't for its distinguished backstory. Despite its familiarity in UK diet and culture, the domesticated apple is not a native species. Like many modern food plants, it originates from wild ancestors, in this case a crabapple. Malas siversii, from the mountains of Central Asia. Its long history of domestication began over 4,000 years ago, and it probably spread westwards with nomadic people. And then we have Weeping Beauty, Weeping Ash, at Seaton Delaval Hall, Northumberland. This fountain of a tree sits squarely in the middle of the lawn at Seaton Delaval Hall. Individual pendulous ash trees like this one occur every now and again in nature as chance variants from the usual form. They have a genetic mutation which causes them to lack the hormone-guided instinct to grow towards the light and instead follow gravitational force downwards. Few would survive were it not for the appeal they have to novelty-seeking gardeners who propagate them by grafting the pendulous shoots onto regular-shaped trunks to create two trees in one. Trees showing variations like this are known as sports. The British Isles have just one native species of ash. Its wood is strong and flexible and was traditionally used for a variety of purposes, from tool handles to hockey sticks. In recent years, a fungal pathogen known as ash dieback has spread rapidly across Europe, killing millions of ash trees. The disease occurs naturally in Eastern Asia, where it coexists with the various species of ash indigenous to the region. The garden team at Seaton Delaval is monitoring this tree closely. exploration of the garden at Biddulph is like a botanical world tour. You'll encounter this beautiful conifer when you reach the China-themed garden. At over 150 years old, it's a lot older than it looks. It was one of the original trees collected from the wild by renowned Victorian plant collector Robert Fortune, 1812 to 80. Golden larch shares a name and its deciduous habit with larch, but this is a very different species which is more closely related to cedar. The golden epithet comes from the gorgeous tones of its autumn foliage. James Bateman, 1811 to 97, lavished his inherited wealth on creating the garden at Biddulph and filling it with irresistible plants. This was an era when botanical treasures were plundered from all over the world, often against the will of national authorities. Robert Fortune disguised himself as a Chinese person to evade attention while collecting plants for his clients. Today, such collection and use of genetic resources is strictly regulated by international agreements. Okay, so there's the book. It's called 50 Great Trees of the National Trust. Okay, I'm going to leave it there now. I hope you enjoyed those two articles about royalty and trees. This has been Kate at the Library of Whispers. I shall see